Let me tell you exactly what I saw. A restaurant inside a four-star hotel in Chicago, Tuesday evening, 7:43 p.m. I know the time because I looked at my phone when I sat down at the bar, and I remember thinking, he told me the flight landed at 8. He was already there, sitting at a corner table. The good kind. The kind you request in advance because you know the restaurant. Because you've been there before, many times. He was laughing. The real laugh. The one that reaches his eyes. The one I fell in love with 14 years ago. Across from him was a woman. Blonde, pretty, comfortable with him in the way that only comes from years. On his left, a boy, maybe 8 years old. On her left, a girl, maybe 6. And on the table between them, a bottle of wine I recognized, because it was the same wine he ordered every year on our anniversary. My husband was wearing his wedding ring, so was she. I sat at that bar for 47 minutes. I ordered a glass of water. I did not cry. I did not move toward him. I did not call anyone. I watched my husband have dinner with his family, his other family, the one that I would find out over the next 72 hours he had been maintaining for 6 years. 6 years, in a different city, with a woman who believed she was his wife, with children who called him dad. I finished my water. I went upstairs to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed, and I made one phone call. Not to him, not to my sister. To a lawyer I had met once at a dinner party 3 years earlier, who had given me her card and said, "If you ever need me, don't wait." I hadn't known why she said it that way. I understood now. She picked up on the third ring. I said 4 words. "I need your help." This is what happened after that, and why my husband lost everything: the first family, the second family, the business, the accounts, the reputation in the space of 4 months. Stay with me. Every word of this is real. His name was Thomas. We met when I was 26. He was 31. He was successful in the way that certain men are successful before you're old enough to recognize what that success is built on. He ran a consulting business, small at first, just him and 2 contractors. By the time we married 3 years later, it had grown to 30 employees and clients in 4 states. He traveled frequently. That was simply part of the life. Every other week, sometimes more, he was in another city: Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, Seattle. I had my own career. I didn't need to follow him. I didn't resent the travel. I trusted him. 11 years of marriage, a house I loved, a life I had built around his schedule and told myself was full. Looking back, and I have done a great deal of looking back, there were things I explained away. The phone he kept face down. Always face down. Always. "Habit," he said. "Notifications drive me crazy." The way he answered calls in other rooms. "Can't hear in here. Too much background noise." The credit card statements I never looked at closely. We had separate accounts. His idea. Early in the marriage. "Easier for taxes," he said. I had agreed without thinking about it. The weeks he was in back-to-back meetings and barely texted. "You know how it gets," he said. "I'll make it up to you." He always made it up to me. Flowers, dinners, a weekend away. He was very good at making things up. I understand now what that was. It was maintenance. Careful, calculated maintenance of a person he needed to keep in place. I was not a wife. I was a component of a system. I found it on a Saturday morning. He was in the shower. I was looking for a pen in the drawer of his nightstand, something I had done 1,000 times. The receipt was folded in half, tucked under his phone charger. I don't know why I unfolded it. Instinct, intuition, the specific alertness that lives in the body even when the mind hasn't caught up. It was from a jewelry store in Chicago. dated 3 weeks earlier, a ring, women's, $4,800. Thomas had not given me a ring 3 weeks earlier. He had not given me anything 3 weeks earlier, except a text saying the meetings were running long and he'd be home Sunday instead of Saturday. He came home Sunday. He brought me flowers. He seemed, now that I was replaying it, slightly too warm, slightly too attentive, the specific attentiveness of someone compensating for something. I folded the receipt, put it back exactly where I found it, went to the kitchen, made coffee, and sat at the table while he showered and thought about what I knew and what I needed to know before I did anything at all. I am not a reactive person by nature. I was raised by a woman who said, "Never make a permanent decision in a temporary emotional state." My mother was right about most things. She was especially right about that. I did not confront Thomas. I did not search his phone. I did not call anyone. I waited 2 weeks. During those 2 weeks, I did 4 things. The first thing I did was open a bank account, my own, in my name only, at a different bank than the one we used together. I transferred enough money to sustain myself for 6 months without touching anything joint. Not because I was planning to leave yet, because I needed options before I needed them. The second thing I did was call my cousin Rebecca. She was a paralegal. Not a divorce attorney, a paralegal. But she knew enough to tell me what I needed to document and how to document it. She asked me one question. "Do you think this is what you think it is?" I said yes. She said, "Then move carefully and move first." The third thing I did was hire a private investigator. I had never thought about hiring a private investigator. I had never imagined I would be the kind of person who hired a private investigator. I called 3, interviewed 2, hired 1. A woman named Carol, who had been doing this for 19 years, and who, when I told her what I suspected, said, "Give me 2 weeks and a travel schedule." I gave her Thomas's calendar, the shared one he kept for transparency. The fourth thing I did was be normal. I cooked dinner. I asked about his day. I laughed at his jokes. I slept in the same bed. Every night for 2 weeks, I lay in that bed next to my husband and kept my breathing even and thought about the receipt and waited. Carol called me on a Thursday. She said, "I need you to sit down." I was already sitting. She told me what she had found. His name in Chicago was also Thomas. Same first name, different last name. Or so she thought. He had married a woman named Diana in a civil ceremony 6 years earlier. They had 2 children, a boy named Marcus, 8, and a girl named Lily, 6. They lived in a townhouse in Lincoln Park. Thomas, my Thomas, paid the mortgage. He had a key. He had a parking space. He had, according to the neighbors Carol spoke to, been a fixture in that neighborhood for years. He was, to Diana and to Marcus and to Lily, a husband and a father who traveled for work every other week. The same story, the exact same story, just inverted. He was home with her when he told me he was traveling. He was home with me when he told her he was traveling. The business was real. It existed in both cities. He had managed, somehow, to build a professional life that legitimized his presence in 2 places. Carol had photographs, 31 of them. Thomas at their home, Thomas at their children's school events, Thomas and Diana at a restaurant. The same restaurant, I noticed, where he had taken me for our 10th anniversary. He had a type, in everything. I looked at all 31 photographs. Then I looked at one more time. Then I put them in an envelope and put the envelope in my car and drove to meet the lawyer. Her name was Margaret. She was 62 years old. She had been practicing family law for 30 years. She had seen, She told me in our first meeting, nearly everything a marriage can produce. She had not seen this exact configuration before. She was very calm about it. That helped me be calm about it. I laid everything on her desk. Carol's report, the photographs, the receipt, a timeline I had compiled over the previous 2 weeks, cross-referencing Thomas's calendar with Carol's findings. Margaret read everything carefully. She asked 3 questions. Did I have access to our joint financial accounts? Yes. Did I know the name of his business attorney? Yes. I had met him at a company dinner 2 years earlier. Did Diana know? Not yet. Margaret said, "Here's what we're going to do." She explained the legal situation. What existed between Thomas and Diana was a bigamous marriage, legally invalid, because his first legal marriage was to me. This meant Diana had certain protections she didn't know she needed. It also meant Thomas had exposed himself to both civil and potentially criminal liability. Margaret said, "Before we file anything, I'd like to reach out to Diana's representation, once she has representation, because her interests and yours are almost entirely aligned." I asked what she meant. She said, "You both want the same thing, everything he has. And divided between the 2 of you, it's still considerably more than either of you could get fighting separately." I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, "How do we contact Diana?" I did not call her myself. Margaret arranged it through an intermediary, a colleague in Chicago who reached out to Diana and explained carefully that there was information she needed to hear and that it would be better to hear it with an attorney present. Diana hired an attorney. The 4 of us, Margaret, myself, Diana's attorney, and Diana, met on a video call on a Wednesday afternoon. I had thought about this moment many times in the 2 weeks since Carol's call. I had thought about what Diana would be like, whether she would be hostile, whether she would blame me, whether she would defend him. She was none of those things. She was a woman in her mid-30s who had spent 6 years building a life with a man she believed was entirely hers. She had a boy named Marcus who played soccer on Saturdays. She had a girl named Lily who was learning to read. She had a mortgage and a routine and a husband who traveled for work and always came home. When Margaret explained the situation, Diana was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, to me directly, "How long have you known?" I said, 3 weeks. She said, "How long has this been happening?" I said, "At least 6 years, possibly longer." Another silence. Then she said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to take everything he has, and I think if we do it together, we can." She looked at me through the screen for a long moment. Then she said, "Okay." Thomas came home on a Friday evening. He walked in with his suitcase. He called my name. I was in the kitchen. I said, "There's someone here to see you." Margaret was sitting at the kitchen table, with a process server standing by the door. Thomas looked at Margaret, then at me, then at the papers being placed on the table. He went very still, the kind of stillness that tells you a person understands exactly what is happening and is calculating whether there is any move left. There wasn't. Margaret had filed that morning. Diana's attorney had filed simultaneously in Chicago. Thomas's business accounts, the joint ones, the ones I had legal access to, had been frozen pending discovery. His business attorney, the one I had smiled at over dinner 2 years earlier, had been notified of a potential conflict of interest in his representation. Thomas stood in my kitchen with his suitcase still in his hand and looked at the woman he had been married to for 11 years and said nothing. I said, "You should call a lawyer." He called 3 over the next 48 hours. 2 declined to represent him once they understood the full scope. The third took the case and subsequently withdrew 4 weeks later. The divorce settlement took 7 months. What I received, I will not detail publicly. What Diana received, for herself and her children, was structured to ensure their stability for the foreseeable future. Thomas's business, without access to its accounts and with its reputation destroyed in the professional community where he operated, did not survive the year. He is, to my knowledge, living in a rental apartment in a city I don't think about. People ask me sometimes how I sat at that bar for 47 minutes and didn't move. The honest answer is, I didn't know what I had yet. I knew something. But knowledge without documentation is just pain. What I spent those 47 minutes doing, without knowing I was doing it, was letting the situation become undeniable. To myself. Fully. Without any remaining room for doubt, because doubt is what he would have used. You misread it. She's a colleague. You're paranoid. I didn't give him doubt. I gave him a process server. The thing about people who live double lives is that they are very good at managing one person's perception at a time. What they cannot manage is 2 people who have stopped competing and started cooperating. Diana and I are not friends. We have not stayed in contact. What we were, for 7 months, was 2 people with the same problem, and the sense to solve it together. If someone in your life is giving you a receipt they forgot to hide, a moment, a detail, a thing that doesn't quite fit, don't react. Document, move carefully, move first, and find the people whose interests align with yours. New story every day. Subscribe so you never miss one. Just wait.